The day of my sister Elena's wedding was supposed to shine with joy and family warmth. Instead, it became the moment when everything I believed about us broke apart. I stood near the aisle, fixing her veil under the glow of chandeliers, when my father's voice cut through the music like a blade. "Security, remove that old man." My chest tightened. Guests turned, whispers rippling across Crownwood Hall. My eyes darted toward my grandfather Samuel, the only one who had ever shown me steady kindness. 2 guards moved closer, tension thick as smoke. My father Daniel crossed his arms with a smirk, sure they'd obey. But one guard shook his head, whispering words that froze the room. "We can't. He's a VIP. People say weddings unite families. For us, it ripped every hidden fracture wide open." My father valued image above all else. Status measured in imported cars, flawless decor, and powerful connections. In climbing into Riverton's elite circles, he had pushed Samuel aside. Even as a child, I saw it. At dinner, Dad mocked Grandpa's stories about building his business from nothing. Nobody cares about the past. The future belongs to people like me. Grandpa never snapped back, just smiled gently while his eyes betrayed the hurt. As the wedding neared, tension wrapped around our home like storm clouds. Elena, graceful and glowing, tried to keep peace, but peace was impossible. One evening, I overheard Dad telling her sharply, "Do you really want your ceremony portraits ruined by some wrinkled old man in the front row?" "Dad, how can you say that?" "He's family, he's my grandfather," Elena gasped. "He's outdated. He doesn't belong in the world I built for us. This wedding is about reputation." And Samuel drags us down. I couldn't stay silent. "Maybe the problem isn't him, Dad. Maybe it's you being ashamed of where you came from." His eyes snapped to me. "Careful, Maya. You don't understand what it takes to survive here. Respect isn't given, it's bought. Your grandfather never understood that." From the corner, Grandpa finally spoke, calm but unyielding. "Respect is earned, Daniel. You've forgotten, but life has a way of reminding us." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad stormed out, leaving Elena in tears. I sat beside Grandpa, and he squeezed my hand. "Don't worry, Maya. The truth always comes out, sometimes louder than we expect." I didn't yet realize how true those words would prove. The rehearsal dinner should have been light, filled with laughter and toasts. Instead, it felt like a chessboard where every move carried hidden tension. The polished table gleamed under chandeliers. Cutlery sparkled like mirrors. Elena sat at the head with her fiancé, her smile strained. Beside her, Daniel looked like a king surveying his court. At the far end, Samuel sat quietly, his modest suit a stark contrast to the designer tuxedos. When the waiter poured wine, Dad leaned back, swirling his glass. His words dripped with contempt. "Not everyone here belongs in this circle." His eyes landed on Samuel. "Dad, please," Elena whispered. He smirked. "Look at this, business leaders, investors, public figures. And then him. An old man clinging to dead ideals, anger burned my cheeks. He's your father. Show some respect," Dad barked a bitter laugh. "Respect comes from influence, wealth, and control. Not age." Grandpa set his fork down, voice calm yet firm. "True strength isn't in wealth. It's in kindness. That's what you've forgotten." Some guests shifted uncomfortably, a few nodding slightly. Dad sneered deeper. "Kindness doesn't fund weddings. Kindness doesn't impress power. This world runs on influence, not fairy tales." Elena's voice cracked as she slammed her napkin down. "Stop. This is supposed to be a happy night. You're humiliating us." But Dad only lifted his glass in a cold toast. "To progress, and to leaving the past where it belongs." The room fell silent. Elena sat frozen, humiliated. Samuel's quiet dignity stood in sharp contrast to my father's arrogance. The dinner ended in suffocating silence, and for the first time, I wondered if tomorrow's wedding would bring disgrace instead of joy. Deep down, I feared I already knew. The wedding morning arrived wrapped in golden light. From the outside, it all looked flawless. White roses climbed marble columns, a string quartet played softly, and guests shimmered in gowns and tuxedos that spoke of wealth. Elena glowed in her ivory silk dress, her smile bright but fragile. I stood beside her, fixing her veil one last time before she stepped onto the aisle. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe the night before hadn't happened, that we could hold together for this one day. That hope broke the moment Daniel entered Crownwood Hall. His steps were sharp, his expression tight. He greeted guests with practiced charm, but his gaze kept darting to the back where Samuel sat quietly. Even in his plain suit, Grandpa's quiet dignity seemed to outshine the chandeliers. Whispers spread quickly. "Isn't that Samuel Hayes?" someone murmured. "Didn't he disappear years ago?" Heads turned, voices rose, and suddenly, the man my father tried to erase had become the center of attention. I saw the twitch in Dad's jaw. He hated it. Hated that in a room filled with investors and public figures, people whispered about his father instead of him. As Elena began her slow walk down the aisle, the tension grew heavy. Dad's thoughts seemed to buzz like static. Control, image, power. He kept glancing toward Grandpa, his fists clenching tighter each time another whisper rippled through the crowd. I leaned close to Elena. "Just focus on today. On you." She forced a shaky smile, though her eyes betrayed her fear. The officiant's voice rose to welcome everyone, elegant words covering an undercurrent of storm. Grandpa sat still, hands folded as if he already knew what was coming. The vows hadn't begun when Dad's mask cracked. Fury replaced charm. He'd been glaring at Samuel from the moment Elena appeared, but now the murmurs had grown too loud. Guests weren't admiring roses or music. They were talking about him. My father's pride couldn't take it. He shot up, his chair screeching against the marble. Gasps rippled through the hall. His voice thundered over music and ceremony alike. "Security! Get that old man out of here, now!" The words slashed the air. Glasses trembled in frozen hands. Elena stumbled, her veil fluttering as she whispered, "Dad, stop." But his face was red with rage. "This is my daughter's wedding. I won't have it ruined by him. Guards, remove him immediately." Two men in dark suits moved down the aisle. My pulse hammered as I stepped forward. "He's your father. How can you humiliate him like this?" Daniel snapped toward me, jabbing the air with his finger. "Stay out of this, Maya. He doesn't belong here. Never did." "He's an embarrassment." Guests exchanged uneasy looks, some whispering in disbelief. This wasn't a family fight anymore. It was a public tearing down of dignity. Yet Grandpa didn't flinch. Rising slowly, he buttoned his jacket with measured grace. His voice was steady, clear. "If pride means more to you than family, Daniel, then maybe it's you who doesn't belong here." The words hit like a slap. Elena stifled a sob. Dad's voice cracked as he roared again. "Out!" I said out. The guards hesitated. They glanced at each other, uncertainty flickering. The entire hall held its breath. One leaned toward the other, his whisper carrying farther than intended. "We can't. He's on the VIP list." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum louder. Dad blinked, stunned. "What did you just say?" The guard straightened, tone firm, professional. "We cannot remove Mr. Hayes. He is registered as a VIP. Policy is strict." The hall erupted, not with applause, but with sharp, shocked whispers. "VIP Samuel Hayes?" Guests leaned in, murmuring in disbelief. My father's triumph shattered. His smirk faltered, his jaw slackened. For the first time, Daniel looked small. I stood frozen, heart pounding. This wasn't the storm itself, only the first crack of thunder. The words struck like a gavel. Gasps rippled through the crowd as guests leaned closer, whispering, "Did he say Hayes? Samuel Hayes? The man who vanished years ago?" "He owns half the city," I glanced around. The very people Daniel had spent years trying to impress now stared at Samuel with awe. Their faces shifted from polite indifference to stunned admiration. Elena's bouquet trembled in her hands, her lips parted but no words came. She looked at Grandpa as if seeing him for the first time. My father's face burned red. He jabbed his finger toward the guards, spittle flying. "I don't care what list he's on. This is my daughter's wedding and I give the orders here." But the shorter guard finally spoke, his voice firm. "With respect, sir, this hotel answers to Mr. Hayes before anyone else." The reaction was immediate. A louder gasp swept the room. Daniel staggered as if the air had been punched from his chest. Grandpa didn't gloat. He simply stood tall, calm, his shoulders squared. His voice was steady. "You tried to erase me, Daniel, but truth can't be erased. Respect is earned, never forced." Murmurs broke out, some nodding toward Grandpa, others shaking their heads at my father in disgust. The tide had shifted. Panic flickered in Dad's eyes as his pride began to crumble in front of the very crowd he had wanted to impress. "This isn't over," he growled. Then Elena's voice cut through, trembling but fierce. "Dad, you've humiliated me. Humiliated yourself. Worst of all, You tried to destroy the one person who never stopped loving us. How could you? The words landed harder than anything else. Guests turned toward her, sympathy in their eyes. My chest ached with tears as I slipped my arm through Grandpa's. The guard stood silently at his side, symbols of a world that no longer bowed to Daniel's arrogance. For the first time, I watched my father shrink, not just as a man, but as an authority figure. The hall felt like a stage, every gaze locked on the two men at its center. Daniel stood trembling, fists clenched, blotches of red across his face. Across from him, Samuel stood calm, his quiet dignity eclipsing Dad's fury. VIP? Daniel spat, his voice raw. That's what this is about? A list? A title? He's just an old man clinging to scraps of power. Grandpa's eyes didn't waver. His tone was gentle but carried through the hall. You see scraps because you measure worth in dollars and handshakes. True power has nothing to do with lists. It's about legacy, about family. The words fell heavy. Guests exchanged looks, many nodding. Daniel barked out a hollow laugh. Family, don't make me laugh. Family doesn't open doors here. Money does. Influence does. That's what I built. You think kindness got me here? Anger surged through me. I stepped forward, voice sharp. Everything you've built means nothing if it costs your own father's dignity. Gasps spread again. Dad snapped toward me, eyes blazing. Maya, you don't understand how the world works. You've been poisoned by his fantasies. I shook my head, tears stinging. No, I've been saved by them. Because unlike you, Grandpa knows respect isn't bought. It's earned. Elena clutched her bouquet, her voice breaking. Dad, stop. This is supposed to be my wedding day, and you've turned it into a circus. But Daniel pressed on, stepping toward Grandpa, desperate. You think you're better than me because of some VIP title? You're nothing. You left me to survive alone, and now you stand here pretending to be some saint. For the first time, Grandpa's calm cracked slightly. Sadness flickered in his eyes. I never abandoned you, Daniel. I gave you everything I could, an education, a foundation. What you did with it, that was your choice. Dad's lip curled. My choice made me powerful. Your way made you invisible. Grandpa's voice was low, almost sorrowful. Invisible, or uninterested in flaunting myself. You think I disappeared, but I was building quietly, giving quietly. Kindness lasts far longer than power plays. The silence after those words was crushing. Guests shifted uneasily, their whispers growing, not against Grandpa, but against my father. I saw pity and disappointment in their eyes. Daniel's voice cracked. You don't understand. None of you. He's not the man you think he is. But no one believed him anymore. Grandpa turned to us, his voice softening. What matters isn't his anger. What matters is what you two carry forward. Don't let this poison your hearts. Elena wept openly, torn by heartbreak. I gripped Grandpa's arm tighter, grounding both of us. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just father versus son anymore. This was a generational verdict, a clash between greed and dignity. And the entire room had chosen its side. The hall buzzed with whispers, a tide rising with every pause between Daniel and Samuel. The shift in the room was slow at first, then impossible to ignore. Guests weren't just curious about Samuel anymore, they were recognizing him. A man in a navy suit leaned toward his wife, his voice carrying. That's Samuel Hayes. He founded Horizon Partners decades ago. Her eyes widened. The firm that backed half the tech industry? Another guest whispered, I heard he funds schools and hospitals. He's a legend. The realization spread like wildfire. Heads turned, no longer seeing a frail man in a modest suit, but a figure of legacy. Someone whose influence reached rooms Daniel had only dreamed of entering. My father's face drained of color. He forced a laugh, brittle. Ridiculous. He walked away years ago. He's nothing now, the shorter guard cut in, voice sharp as steel. Sir, Mr. Hayes isn't just on the VIP list. His foundation has been a silent partner of this hotel for over a decade. His name is on the building itself. The collective gasp nearly knocked me off my feet. I glanced at Grandpa. He stood steady, no prideful smirk, no need to bask in attention. His calm only made him stronger. Elena's bouquet slipped from her hands. Grandpa, is that true? He gave her a gentle smile. Yes, sweetheart. But it was never about showing off. It was about making sure others had opportunities, even if they never knew my name. Murmurs rose again, this time filled with awe. Executives and public figures stood nodding toward him, some even extending hands. Daniel staggered, his bravado shattering. "No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. You're trying to humiliate me." Grandpa's eyes locked on him. His tone was unyielding. "No, Daniel. You've done that yourself. Truth reveals who we are, and today everyone sees clearly." The officiant tried to speak, but the ceremony was already lost beneath the weight of my father's collapse. Elena stepped forward, tears streaking her cheeks. "All this time you never told us," she whispered. "You could have changed everything." Samuel shook his head softly. "I didn't want you to lean on wealth. I wanted you to be strong without it. But today it seems the truth needed to be seen." Daniel's hands trembled as he grasped for control. "You think they respect you? They'll forget you the moment you leave. I'm the host, the father of the bride. I'm the one they'll remember." But his words fell flat. No one looked at him. All eyes were on Samuel, the man Daniel had tried to erase, standing steady at the center of the storm. The wedding never returned to what it was meant to be. The flowers still glowed, the music still played, but the heart of it had changed. Guests knew they'd witnessed something unforgettable. Not vows, but Daniel Hayes's collapse. At the altar, Elena stared at our father as if she no longer knew him. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking, "how could you do this today?" He reached for her, but she stepped back, fire in her tears. "You humiliated me. You humiliated Grandpa, all for your pride." The silence was heavy. Not one friend came to his defense. The man who had built his life on wealth and bluster now stood alone. Grandpa rested a steady hand on Elena's shoulder. "Don't let anger take this from you, darling. Your love is still worth celebrating." His calm voice soothed like balm. Elena broke, sobbing against his chest in her gown, while my father stood helpless a few feet away. I walked up to him, heart racing but firm. "You always said respect had to be bought," I whispered. "But today you learned the truth. Money can't erase arrogance, and it can't erase shame." His face crumpled. For once, Daniel had no words. The ceremony resumed awkwardly, but it was no longer his event. It belonged to Elena, and in many ways to Samuel. Guests congratulated her, and they honored him, speaking of the Hayes legacy not through Daniel, but through the man he had tried to bury. Later, beneath the chandeliers, Grandpa took my hand. His grip was warm, his gaze soft. "Maya," he said, "remember this. Power fades. Wealth disappears. But dignity is eternal. Carry that, and you'll never be poor." Tears blurred my vision. "I'll remember, Grandpa. I promise." As guests drifted out, Daniel lingered alone in the corner, avoided and ignored, a shadow of the man who had strutted in hours earlier. And I realized then, this day wasn't just Elena's wedding. It was the day pride was stripped bare and true worth revealed. And after that, the Hayes family would never be the same. That was my story. And even now, a part of me is still living in that moment. If you've ever been through something like this, or even if you haven't, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done. And if this story meant something to you, go ahead and subscribe. You never know. The next story might change how you see the world.